All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. There are clear differences that are showing within the Israeli cabinet. Now, the country's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was publicly challenged about his post-war plans for the Gaza Strip by his own Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Now, Yoav Gallant has vowed to oppose any long-term military rule by the State of Israel over the Palestinian enclave. Benjamin Netanyahu, on the other hand, in a riposte which did not explicitly name Gallant, hinted that the retired admiral was making excuses for not having destroyed Hamas in a conflict which now is in its 8th month. Let's also now take a look as to what more the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said in a televised news conference. He said that he's been unsuccessfully trying to promote a blueprint for an alternative Gaza administration that is made up of the Palestinians themselves. He also said that these efforts have gotten no response from various decision-making cabinet forums under Netanyahu. It is also worthy to reiterate here that Gallant incidentally comes from the Prime Minister's own right-wing Likud party.
Since October, I have been raising this issue consistently in the cabinet and have received no response. The end of the military campaign must come together with political action. The day after Hamas will only be achieved with Palestinian entities taking control of Gaza, accompanied by international actors, establishing a governing alternative to Hamas's rule. This, above all, is an interest of the State of Israel.
The Gallant's comments were immediately backed by his fellow minister Benny Gantz, and this of course has plunged the Israeli leadership into a very highly public row. Remember, both made visits to the United States during the time of negotiation efforts. The Israeli Prime Minister has said that any conversation about a post-war Gaza plan is just mere words until Hamas is wiped out. Netanyahu has said that destroying the 4 battalions that still remain in Rafah is necessary to achieve a total victory. He's also refused proposals for an internationally backed Palestinian Authority to move back into a post-war Gaza. Now, the United States Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has also said that Israel needs a clear and a concrete plan as to when the conflict ends in the Gaza Strip. He's also said that Gaza faces the potential of a power vacuum that could be filled by chaos, while ruling out any support for long-term Israeli occupation of the Gaza Strip. Now, since the beginning of this war, Israel has blocked the import of cash into Gaza, resulting in a shortage of banknotes, as thousands of desperate people are queuing up outside of ATMs, often waiting for days for accessing cash. Armed gangs are taking advantage of this situation with no Palestinian police. They're demanding a fee to provide priority access to their own cash. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what, of course, is happening at this moment with respect to this war, we're being joined by Mr. Daniel Levy, who is the president of the U.S. Middle East Project, and has also been the former senior advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister's office, and is joining us live from London. Mr. Levy, thank you very much indeed, sir, for taking time out and speaking to us here in WION. And let me ask you this question. The fact that there are cracks within the Netanyahu government had been evident for quite some time now, but the differences are quite clearly open, where the defense minister, who is of course leading this military effort in the Gaza Strip, seems to be publicly disagreeing with his prime minister. What are we to make of this?
You are absolutely correct to point out that this is not a new development, but going so public is a new and significant development. And I think the way this is being interpreted inside Israel is that, yes, the defense minister, Gallant, the gentleman in question, is, of course, a political operative, a member of Netanyahu's party. But most people understand him to be speaking what the security establishment, what the military leadership are thinking. And this is happening at a moment, number one, where Israel has begun this long-awaited, potentially devastating for even more Palestinian civilians. You spoke there about the situation, the devastation inside Gaza. This is happening as Israel is beginning that long-awaited offensive in Rafah. Many in the military consider First of all, that this is not going to go easily. The whole military operation has not gone that well for Israel. And one of the main reasons that is the case is that the prime minister set a bar for this operation, which is unreachable. In other words, the total elimination of Hamas. And that if you don't have politics alongside a military effort, then you go in with at least one and perhaps more hands tied behind your back, because we all know the old adage that a military operation is the continuation of politics by other means. If you have no politics, then you're offering nothing by way of a way out. It also happens, and you reference this, against the backdrop of the increasing frustration of the Biden administration that has taken a more palpable turn with the withholding of certain weapons. What this tells us, I think, is that if both maintain their positions and intensify their positions, by both I mean the disquiet in the Israeli military and the US administration, then Netanyahu has a problem. However, if Biden backs down, then I think internally Netanyahu will be able to reassert himself. And he is basically saying, look, you're the defense minister, you're the military, you're to blame for what happened. I'm just the prime minister. I had to rely on my professionals. And this is a very big fight inside Israel now.
You know, it's a very big fight inside Israel, as you point out, but also what is being talked about a lot within Israel is the failure to bring back the hostages who've been in the Gaza Strip in the custody of Hamas for over 8 months now. Is this being looked at as a failure of the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, where he's not done enough to negotiate with Hamas to secure the release of the hostages?
Look, it's a very polarized place, as I'm sure you're aware. I'm talking about Israel. The Prime Minister has a not insignificant Amen corner. He has a not insignificant media echo chamber, and he has a society that is very mobilized, often in very problematic and inhuman and dangerous ways, I think we have to acknowledge, against the Palestinians. Now, of course, he has an opposition, and one of the main failures laid at his door is precisely that. 8 months we're approaching now. There was an initial deal after a few weeks where over 100 of the hostages got out. Since then, things have been stuck. And why have they been stuck? They have been stuck, we have to be honest here, not because Hamas has an impossibly unreasonable negotiating position. It's a hard position, but it is a position which means that the war would come to an end. And it's been stuck because Netanyahu, for reasons that are increasingly transparent as personal political reasons that he wants this war to continue, he is saying no to a deal which brings the war to an end. And more inside his own military are saying, Mr. Prime Minister, we're not going to totally defeat Hamas just by military means. In fact, it's probably not possible at all. Mr. Prime Minister, you're giving no political way out. We're not going to get the hostages. And militarily, we are getting bogged down. And your plan will mean we get even more bogged down. And if your plan is that we stay in Gaza indefinitely, and this was the direct issue of confrontation with the defense minister, if that's the plan, then we need to know, because our troops are increasingly exhausted, our munitions are very dependent on America. America is increasingly unhappy with what you're doing. Mr. Prime Minister, you are setting us on a road to even greater failure. And already many of the commentators are saying this is not the total victory the Prime Minister promised, but this is looking much more like a resounding defeat.
All right, we'll have to leave there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Daniel Levy, for joining us and getting us that perspective from London then.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.